Take a look at what I am showing you today, the new Ferrari SF90 XX.
I'm not adding the third X because in fact it's already banned for people under 18. Raffaele De Simone, Ferrari's chief test driver, hello.
Hello.
Hi. I ask you for help. I raised my hand for help from home because this car is not only an SF90, it is an SF90 taken to the nth degree. And there is so much content in it that only a Ferrari man like you, especially one who has lived in it and tested it, can explain. Improved in aerodynamics, improved in engine, improved in electronics, improved in electrics, improved in everything. So much so that you've now turned in 1, 17, and 3.
309 to be exact.
Here on the Fiorano track, going to record the best time ever by a Ferrari road car. With that, we are approaching the times of a GT3 probably.
Yes, definitely of a challenge car, and then also the GT3 in the meantime have gone faster, but not so bad, yes.
The car is beautiful. I mean, Flavio has done, as always, a great job on the SF90. He has done a great job on everything that is the evolution of even its sculptural forms. But in this case, we are not only talking about design, but we are also talking about aerodynamics. Because compared to the SF90 you have done a killer job, you can see right away here on the front end, to ensure much more load on the front end, but in the overall also on the rear end. So much so that now the wing has appeared, which from the F50 we didn't see. Since
Here
the
you
F50,
can see,
so almost 30 years.
You said, well, to the nth degree compared to the SF90, but I would like to say more than because of the 30 more horsepower, which you can feel anyway, to the nth degree effectiveness. Because then actually what we have done is not to increase the straight performance, indeed then top speed, maybe something is lost. Also, no, because anyway a little bit, you pay this vertical load with a little bit more drag, and however it was, a car works substantially better in all conditions in straight. And in exit curve running,
there are no situations in which the car got worse except just the top speed, as you said, better in everything, but these 30 more horsepower is not a lot. However, it was actually a lot before. However, it must also be said that they have been found a little bit from the electrical part, but they have also been found from a refinement work of the F154, which takes on the new C or D definition, I think it's called, if I remember correctly, which, precisely, thanks to the new pistons, thanks to tricks on the polishing of the intake ducts and other small, let's say, tricks that Ferrari engineers have brought to this engine, have given yet another evolution of this V8 engine, which seemed destined to disappear, but which actually continues to exist alive and well inside this SF90, going precisely to create all that energy that also serves to give movement to the front axle, which never ceases to amaze. 2 engines up there in front, 1 for each wheel, that go to control not only, let's say, the supply of energy on the front axle, thus the all-wheel drive, but also go to ensure a torque vectoring that adds steering to the steering.
let's put it this way. Yes, the architecture of this component remains the same as the SF90, so 2 front motors plus 2 rear motors thermal and a third electric motor in the rear. What makes the car faster instead is the study of aerodynamics, as you have seen, and especially everything is how it approaches the car, the air, because having a firmer front end definitely means bringing more combined into the corner entry to cool, in this case better the hybrid part. Later I will show you how. And close the bottom, giving load by going aerodynamic load, just because the mid-temperature radiators have been turned over. So now the hot air that cools the hybrid components goes up enters from these side ducts and then exits from above with a solution identical to the S duct.
It runs upwards, it enters from here. By the way, the splitter has been increased both in depth, let's say, in length, but it has also been lowered compared to the original car. This allows precisely to go and increase the load. And then let's say on the sides of this element, I have to say the only part I don't like about this car is the presence of the sensor, but after all they have to have it also for homologation issues. However, in fact the air runs inside this channel, it comes out here on top, going then to drain from these vents with a swirl effect, which is generated by this element that comes out precisely from the body itself. It loses the it loses the trunk. This is another element.
However, before it was 0 though.
because there was already the electric motor. Everything was little, like the GTR RS, I don't know how to say. However, it loses, let's say,
Actually, compared to the car you mentioned, we don't overturn even the high temperature radiators.
I know.
Can I say it? Because you have the convertible variant.
It is unfortunately all the heat that comes out right now is channeled and contained by the two cold outlets, but the hot part stays central and clean by moving it away from the car to prevent then in its convertible version coming in through the roof.
In fact, one of the cool things about this car is that all the performance of this car, so the fastest Ferrari ever, is also found in the Spider variant, which I can imagine will run a few tenths slower than the coupe.
We are talking about 60 kilos more or so.
However, this one weighs 1,560 kilograms, so you take away something compared to the original car. However, a lot of content is also added, in fact. So the work actually to take away weight has been done. There are many elements that have been lightened compared to the car, let's say original, but precisely the introduction, for example, of the aerodynamic part of this wing and other components increases.
The cooling especially
increases the weight. There is a whole theme related also to this wing. Precisely it is, let's say, the element that characterizes more aesthetically this SF90 compared to the previous one. Then actually in second reading all the details are different, but one thing that you were pointing out to me also is the fact that the chord of the central part is different than the lateral part. That's because the shut-off gurney, that's what it's called, raises and lowers this element, so it remains a part of active aerodynamics, and this upper part, let's say, works symbiotically with the part underneath, just to go to ensure the maximum load, or precisely also the ability to ensure advancement to the car.
Exactly. Let's say it's meant to be a kind of reverse DRS. When it's open, the wing stays at a fixed low incidence and the flows flow over and under and shut off to minimize drag. When instead the caisson opens, it goes beat, this area almost closes, it creates a different vorticity and makes the upper airfoil fall back and still work differently, resulting as if it has a physical, therefore static incidence higher than the one it actually has.
And that is why the middle part has a lower chord while the side part is nice and mean.
Here works like
a traditional wing.
I noticed some air vents to empty the wheel arch. From here, precisely the air comes out that is charged inside. Let's put it this way, I'll make it simple. Of the wheel arch, clearly all the air intakes for cooling the engine in the side part also remain. The air intake here in the rear has been increased for the intercooler and for the intake, which is precisely part of this ear that you see popping out of the side, while as far as the length of the body, I think the car is slightly longer than the donor, right?
Yes, because then you also take advantage of the levers, of the two cantilevers on the aerodynamic.
You have a tail and a front end that are a few centimeters longer, precisely than the front end, particularly at the back. You notice this line. So long tail, it's also called in technical sporting terms precisely because you've lengthened the tail, rightly as you say, to go and give more leverage, but also to ensure a better flow out and therefore allow the car to be faster on the straight. Although then we just said that because of all these aerodynamic arrangements. Clearly you have more load, more than 500 kilos, right? 530, the balance of the car
remains similar to that of the SF90.
So predominantly on the rear axle, clearly, where obviously the V-Octo engine presses, which is arranged very low. Would you open the glass for me for a moment, because it's something extraordinary? An engine that precisely in its maximum evolution is 797 horsepower, but look how low it is. Every time I open this hood, you really have to get down to see where it's positioned, and it's something extraordinary. The turbines are on either side of the banks. Are counter-rotating HI. They are small in size. So this allows for little turbo lag. Actually, they could even have bigger turbines precisely because the compensation of the turbo lag is done by the electric motor that is placed between the heat engine. Precisely this V-Octo, almost 4,000 displacement with the gearbox, 8 gears without the reverse because the reverse is done by the front electric motor.
And precisely in between there is a clutch system, among other things, very complicated, that goes to select which motor to use or use both.
The usability in electric did not interest it for the purpose of the X-Road version and therefore remained in the same logic and characteristics of use as the SF90.
Let's close for a moment. Actually, then there are some differences. We have the electronic trim, or the passive trim, or the Fiorano trim.
Wanting passive,
let's say an evolution of the Fiorano setup or an evolution of the standard setup, because here, dear Raffaele, comes a very cool thing. That is a 6-axle control unit. Actually, those who are passionate about motorcycles have already tried these things, because on the R1, on the Panigale, on the Aprilia, they have been there for a while, but on the cars, let's say they are a first. So there is a control of the position of the car on all the axles, basically so the one of the height.
passive here is focused compared to motorcycle more on knowing the ground forces on the tires, sure, and this...
That allows to introduce a cool feature that is ABS Evo.
Yes, the ABS Evo is the other one responsible for being able to file tenths around each corner, because basically it manages to brake later. However, that optimizes the slip on the individual tires, a greater cornering brake, therefore also unbalanced on the rear. But above all, this gives us a big advantage. It allows us to brake in the corners, bringing so much speed to the apex.
Very nice derived braking system.
CCM. So basically we have exploited here too. The aero gives us more load on the rear. We had to resize the rear brakes for the greater load. And so basically we find a sizing at less than the pad equal SF90 at the front, at the post. Instead we went by size at the next step of the sizing of the discs.
I was saying 488 Evo derivation because I saw it recently at Mugello, and actually then the braking system...
No, the 296 that we saw at Fiorano.
I'm talking about the 488 Evo.
Are you talking about the Evo? Yes, then it is. So while it is not yet a CCMR, we are developing on the Challenge.
Absolutely. Here we have a 6-piston caliper, clearly developed in collaboration with Brembo, 255, 35, 20 Michelin Pilot Cup 2, but actually with the R. It goes even better. Behind here again, always Pilot Sport Cup 2 with a 315/30 ZR20. Clearly here at the back, the energy is discharged significantly more than what is the front axle, so it takes a little bit more rubber. You notice so much, not only the upper aerodynamics, but also at the rear, an air extractor that, let's say, starts to be as big as the car at the 12 competitions. We're about that size of the Super Attico in Milan, with a lot of terrace. So I would say it's not bad. It clearly generates a lot of load. It works symbiotically with the top. Then we have a nice air vent back here with this crazy grill that allows the astrego of what the two air parts above do. See? Where it vents the hot air, they've highlighted it in orange, sort of. This is kind of... Yeah. And then aside from the part...
much more bare, even in the extraction part of the...
Wheel, can you also show me a little bit what changes inside, or what it looks like inside anyway, Raffaele? Would you like a second also? Because, by the way, you are also, let's say, the one who also takes care of what are all the ergonomics aspects of the car, right? You are very attentive to these details. Clearly, you live on these cars, and they have delegated to you also.
Because anyway, we recognize that some Ferrari have been very careful to make us all fit in and make us feel good, because then, in performance, it goes very much hand in hand with the ergonomy.
In fact, there is one thing I always notice when I get into the Ferrari, which is that I, who am 6 feet tall, also fit into it with my helmet on, which on so many supercars I can't do. I have to stand either with my head a little bit crooked, or in any case, I'm not comfortable. So it's clear that for a person who is 6 feet tall, this is a small detail, but since I think you also have a lot of basketball players, to be clear, among your customers, or at any rate people who are a little more corpulent than what a jockey or a racer might be, it's clear that you also have to have a cockpit that is able to accommodate. This is actually a very cozy cockpit. Beautiful seat. Here, there are two options.
Ergonomics in this one that has sizes, while instead weight optimization, you have it on the structure.
On that other one. But already this one is totally carbon fiber. It's a seat that still allows you to take off a lot of weight. It keeps what are the adjustments even of the inclination of the backrest. And plus, we also carry the 4-point belt.
Very nice. This adjustment finally with items that, in short, adjust very well, and with the sensor, so for all intents and purposes a 4-point racing but homologated.
In fact, Rafa, I found it very easy to put on because unlike usually these racing-derived belts that are a bit complicated, this one I'm not saying you put it on like a normal belt, but we're almost at that level there. As far as the instrumentation is concerned, I would say that everything has remained the same, 16 inches, clearly with customizations that also involve the boost graphics that you have of the...
Is if you want the only change is that basically, as you see, we have, if I remove all...
Various, go easy, meanwhile I'll go ahead and show. It has remained the display in the central part, the writing is evolved with the appearance of the XX. There is the Alcantara regarding the upper part and the lower part of the dashboard, which weighs less than leather. Then we always have the carbon fiber regarding the central part. Beautiful from a construction point of view. You were telling me precisely, here it is, the racing instrumentation.
Exactly, we enhance the visibility and the size of the tachometer, and then a kind of semi-arc finally appears where there are the slots of the extra boost.
Okay, extra boost, that's 13 horsepower. I can't remember, how many do you have? Yes, it's 13. 13 horsepower that precisely appear at the time when the conditions are good, of temperature, of handling, let's say, the electric.
Under at qualifying position of the energy knob and not activated by button unless you pre-select it, because then in the end the management is under the throttle. So 1 in 1,030 horses, you don't have to reason them by pushing buttons, by increasing the driving load. Doesn't seem few. However, you're not paid attention driving it, and it's not so much the amount of the extra horsepower, it's the fact that it's the jerk with which this torque restitution is basically accomplished. This practically, the strategy works exactly like in Formula One. So when the drag the car is not as high, and because then it goes a little bit slower and it's the corner exit and it comes a lot sooner. So if one were to make a graph, you would see how it fills all that part of the response in the initial phase. So more than the 13 horsepower, it's the restitution jerk.
In fact, after we will see it on the track, there are different strategies that precisely allow you to make even more harmonious what is the behavior of a car that in any case is already in itself has proven to be super fast and very nice to drive. By the way, here we have the electronically controlled suspension. It stays in the Manettino with the possibility precisely by pressing the button to go and select different suspension modes. This is one of 799 examples. I can't remember how many you make of the Spider.
200 less, I think.
Yes, about a couple hundred less. However, in fact, the car has all been sold already, so there is no problem from that point of view. You have to see it on YouTube videos because the car has already been reserved. So if you want to reserve it, you have to wait for the next special editions that maybe will come. I don't know.
There is SF90 though, still.
But there is the SF90 normal, which, however, Raffaele...
I am a great lover of the SF90. It's a different drive than two-wheel drive, very sharp, very precise, and in my opinion, its capita gives great satisfaction. The design with this architecture for me is beautiful.
Especially uphill, it looks like a dirt bike. You go up like a rocket, however precisely with 1,000 horses. Now let's go and discover them on the track, these 1,030 horses. Thank you, Rafa. I'll enjoy it, and then we'll draw the conclusions on the price. Let's go.
Here we are behind the wheel of our Ferrari SF90 XX. Takes speed like a space shuttle, a car that was already very fast in the very first version, the one we first drove on the road and then also here on the Fiorano track. It was incredibly performance-oriented in that Assetto Fiorano with the passive, quote-unquote, racing-derived dampers. But even with this XX, it goes further in terms of performance, down everything. You get on the bridge with the power of all-wheel drive and brake by taking advantage of the new ABS Evo that Ferrari has tuned, by exploiting the electronics of the new management. Six-axle woo, which allows you to brake hard, but also to go to work on all the controllable parameters of the car, so the shock absorbers. Ooh, the disbursement of the engine, the control, ooh, how fast it goes, the control on the front axis of the electric motors. All this is controlled by the six-axis control unit, which then returns these values to you. Of acceleration on both the front motor and the two front motors, but also on the two rear motors, of which the one... Cool. Woo! Mama, how it brakes! Aha! It's the 797 horsepower V8, full throttle. Show me how fast you can go. The scooter, this V8, is something extraordinary, but already here at 150
kilometers per hour left, feel the work of aerodynamics. The car stands much more on the ground than
to the SF90 Stradale and everything we had seen previously. Ooh, it gets better!
going to assure this SF90. See how it goes. The behavior. Really extreme dynamic. It's bad engine. It has torque. Absurd, but it's very well managed. From electronics. Takes your breath out.
Here in this long curve, you make great use of what is aerodynamics. 190 kilometers per hour. 2 and 10 on the braking. Resumes that not even...
You notice? Check out how it slides. The way out. You handle it, guys.
Ooh, it's a lot of stuff. It's really a lot of stuff. It's a great Ferrari. It's the fastest ever on the Fiorano track, but it's also that manages to really carry over all the concepts of a modern car. Then we can talk for hours about the fact that this SF90 is a hybrid car. Ooh. And that much of
this driving dynamic.
Come on! Come out. How wonderful. Much of this comes out of the coexistence of these three engines. Mamma mia, it takes your breath away, but really.
As much as we may love the mechanics
of the electric, it helps the engine to be...
Look how well it comes out. It helps the motor to compensate for turbo lag. It helps everything, the system, to go beyond what is the response lag typical of mechanical components, the response lag that everything powered obviously does not have. Battery powered. All of this is clearly synchronized by this control unit that controls the abs, controls the dampers, controls everything controllable to allow this extraordinary performance to this Ferrari SF90 XX that of the road takes everything but precisely brings it to yet another potential. I was saying at the beginning jokingly that adding an X to it would be something banned for under 18-year-olds actually. Here, we should raise the threshold of being of age to at least 45, so I would still fit in. Joking aside, it is something extraordinary, and it shows you once again that here in the Motor Valley, they know how to make cars great. Ferrari is certainly the pinnacle of all that is being Motor Valley. But it's also always a step ahead of all the competition, even in coming up with further sophisticated versions of a technical scheme. That it's not that they invented at Ferrari, but still was born with the second generation NSX New Sport experience. But in Ferrari, they had the strength, the will, the ability to take that concept to extremes with 3 electric motors, plus the heat motor going to create the fastest Ferrari ever on this track, but certainly the fastest on any track where it will show up and dictate the law in terms of performance, but of a senseless fast is something that must lead to a recalibration. Let's say of the concepts that you had until some time ago of a high performance car. Again, we can talk for now about it being a little heavier than a fight that has messes, electrical complications, but in fact this set in here is the fastest thing that exists. And I'm sure that whoever will buy this car, those lucky 799 will be able to have
under the butt something really extraordinary, unique, and absolutely inimitable. Great Ferrari, great piece of machinery that really took my breath away. And here we are. Super finish test. I don't know if we lapped in 1:17.399, which is the new Fiorano track record, but this car proved that it really is something photonic. Certainly it is the fastest road homologated object ever to come out of the Maranello factories, and it proved that on the Fiorano track, and if you want it can prove it on any track in the world. In any case, it is an objectively extraordinary car costing 770,000 euros in the coupe variant, 850,000 in the Spider variant. The bad news, even for those who have 2 extra pennies to spend, is that there is no longer the possibility of ordering it because in fact they have all already been sold. But what this car does, in addition to going super strong, is demonstrate that you can go beyond what the SF90 road car has already demonstrated by going on to set new benchmarks in the world of supercars with precisely a level of performance that is absolutely enviable. Then we can talk for now about the fact that it is hybrid of the electric, the non-electric, the fact that it weighs, the fact that it doesn't weigh, and anything else you want. The fact remains that between the electronics, between the electric, between the gasoline engine, between the body, between the suspension, between the aerodynamics, between everything is the object in here that runs the fastest ever, so there is little to discuss to go faster. You possibly need a challenge variant and or a GTE of the GTR. With that's it only remains for me to invite you to comment on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course on automoto.it. We say goodbye to our SF90 XX, made us enjoy so much. Take care. Long live the passion for the car and full throttle like this. Bye.